Oh, hello there. Do you remember me? I'm kidding. Hi, it's me, Cristela Alonso, finally with another episode of To Be Continued, my podcast. It's been such a long time. Honestly, I don't even want to look to see how old the last episode is. It's pretty old. So, look, the question is, where have I been and what have I been doing? And the answer is really simple. I've been living life. That's pretty much it. Here's the deal. I think social media has become so heavy into sharing everyone's life. Everyone feels like they have to show their lives to you. You got the people that they want to show you what cleaning supplies they're using so that you can use them. They want to show you how they work out. They want to show you what kind of life they have. A day in the life. Oh, look at me. I'm eating a burrito. That's how I eat burritos, by the way. But, and I think that sometimes I think it can be cool. But honestly, to tell you the truth, sometimes I feel like I worry about sharing too much, if that makes any sense, you know? And a lot of these videos just show you the greatest hits of people's lives, which makes sense because who wants to show you the bad times of their lives, right? Like, you really don't see a lot of videos where it's like, hey, everybody, come with me. I'm going to go declare bankruptcy. YOLO. Um, I guess actually those people do exist. I mean, there's like times where I see people that they're sharing miserable times of their lives. Like you have people that are just crying. It's always like they're crying so much and they got bad news and they're just devastated. And every time I see these videos, I always think like, I mean, I know it's sad, but you really had time to set up the camera and the lights and everything before you cried? That's a lot, because I mean, look, I'm doing a podcast right now, and to set this up, I mean, it's like I have lights, I have a camera, I have a microphone. It's a lot of work, but I don't know. I think that I know there's people that would like to see more about my life and what I do and stuff, but I feel like there's a part of me that doesn't want to give too much of myself to social media, and that's because the more I show, I feel like the more I give people something to criticize. Now, it's weird because I know, and by the way, I'm writing notes because I wanted to make sure that I said everything that I wanted, that I wanted to talk about, but, it's weird because, like, I know that people will say, well, like if you get a hateful comment, don't listen to the haters, don't listen to the haters. And to be honest, I don't. Usually when I post things, I kind of move on and I never see the comments. I'll only see them every once in a while when a comment comes in from a friend of mine, from someone I know. And then maybe underneath it, there's a comment, from someone that doesn't know me that's like wanting to criticize me, and I think it's one of those things, to be honest, I know that the thing that bothers me the most from those hateful comments is how dumb people are. Or rather, how ignorant people are. Like they'll say I'm ugly and then they'll have a picture of their face, and like I look at them and I'm like, damn, like you should be talking, like do you want a mirror? Because if you don't, I mean, I can send you one. You got to do some research, and then I start thinking like, well, maybe I am ugly, because I game recognize game. Um, I'm kidding. I'll think I'm ugly. So let me get straight to what I wanted to talk about in this episode, which is telling you about my personal life. So like everything that I just said, I take it back. JK. I'm kidding. Actually, some of you might have noticed that today, I'll get to it. Some of you noticed today I announced that I'm shooting my third Netflix special. It's my third special, and I'm shooting it in Dallas, Texas. It's been 3 years since the last one, and this weekend it kind of occurred to me that some of you don't know much about me. I ended up getting literally hundreds of thousands of followers since the last time I did a podcast episode. I ended up getting so many followers from clips that I posted from my last special, Middle Classy. Um, First of all, I gotta be honest, I don't like uploading clips. I actually I didn't get it. I didn't think that anybody would see them, and honestly, I kind of hate how much extra work comedians are expected to do in regards to marketing themselves online. Like I was just talking about this with some comedy buddies at the club last night. I was doing Comedy and Magic, my favorite club. It's Hermosa Beach. Saturday nights, I usually do 2 shows. It's a 10 comics. You never know who's going to show up. And last night was a rare night where I just saw a bunch of guys that I hadn't seen literally in years. Because that's another thing. People don't realize that in stand-up comedy, the comics, we don't get to see each other very often because a lot of us are working. We work on the weekends, we come in, and then when we're here, we're living our life. We're trying to catch up. So I was talking to my friends last night. We were in the green room, and I was talking about how much work there has to be. It's like you're expected to post jokes, right? Obviously, that makes sense because as a comic, that's kind of like what I'm selling, right? Like real estate agents sell houses, so they show you like, here's the house, right? That makes sense. But in order to post those jokes, I need to create those jokes. And by that, I mean, I got to record the jokes. I got to hire something. I have to hire someone to come and record the jokes. Or I have to buy the equipment and then set up the equipment when I'm performing and stuff and, capture it. Then if I do that, then I got to go home and I got to edit the video and I got to do all this stuff. And then I got to upload and hope that people watch it and stuff. And to me, it just becomes this like vicious cycle. It's like, shoot it yourself, edit the videos, repeat the cycle, blah, blah, blah. And my question is, if I do all that, when the hell do I have time to write the actual jokes? Which is my favorite part, writing the jokes. But I decided to post the clips because I shot 2 specials. And to be honest, they didn't get a lot of attention, and it was this weird thing where part of me was like, well, should I post them? Because when they came out, people didn't really watch them. And, it's like if they liked it, they would have watched it and shared it. And then I thought, well, you know what? Why don't we try? And I started posting. I decided to post clips and I was like, all right, we'll see what happens. So I started posting. My first clip that I posted was from my last special, Middle Classy. And it's one of my favorite jokes from it. And it's about how I don't think that I'm old and I don't think that I'm young. Like, I think that I'm right in the middle, right? Like, I consider myself like an iPhone 6, and which is true, by the way. When I posted that video, there were so many people that were saying, oh no, you're old, and then other people were saying, no, you're young. And I'm thinking, no, I really do feel like I'm in the middle of my life. Because when you think about it, if you're lucky enough to become, to get to be older, if you get to grow to be in your 80s, your 90s, I'm 46 years old. I'm literally like around halfway point of my life. So no, I don't consider myself old. And I started thinking when people said that I was old, I never think that I'm old. And then I started thinking, what a sad way to think that they think that 43 at the time that I shot the special, they thought that 43 was old. And I'm thinking, wow, so you think that when you're 43, you're old? You're not. You still have a lot of life ahead of you. So, anyway, I posted the clip And that clip it went viral. It ended up getting, I think it's like 20 million views now. 20 million views just on Instagram. Like blew my mind, right? I couldn't believe it. I still can't, and that made me think, okay, well, maybe I should post some other clips, right? And because why not? Well, I started posting other clips from my special, and I started posting clips from the first special, Lower Classy. I started posting these things. And look, a lot of my stand up, I tell people all the time, this is one of the reasons I don't like to share so much of my life online. I am very personal when I'm on stage. I talk a lot about my life. I am very specific. I get into details about how I grew up. And I always believe that because I try to be personal on stage, I kind of want to not be so personal off stage too. I pick and choose my moments. So, I started posting these clips, and I'm not kidding, there were a bunch that got like millions of views, and I couldn't understand it, at all, and then I kept thinking, like, immediately, like this, I started getting followers. And before you knew it, I think that before I started posting the clip, I had like 130,000 followers. And now I'm at like 500,000. I got 400,000 new followers just from posting clips. And the weird thing is that most people think they get all these followers and they start thinking, oh my God, I need to post more content. I need to keep posting jokes. I need to keep doing this. I need to do, it's like, It's like, I need to post more, create more, write more. I need to keep it going. But the thing is, I didn't want to do that at all. I didn't want to build up this expectation of creating content just to get views, it's not who I am. I didn't want to worry about figuring out what the next viral thing would be. I'm a comedian. I love stand-up. I love stand-up so much. And for me, I always try to focus on the next special, however long that takes. People like to ask me, how long does it take you to write an hour? Like, how long does it take you to do a special? And I always say, however long it takes. I mean, I'm not in any rush. This is kind of what the whole point of me doing this is, to just do it until I think it's ready. Because the thing is that I never thought I was going to get to do this for a living. The way I started stand-up really was by accident. And I wanted to tell you this story because it connects to my third special, the one that I'm shooting this June. It's about coming back to where it started, Dallas, Texas. I picked Dallas to shoot my special because that's where I started to do stand-up. Back in, 2003, 22 years ago? Wow. It sounds like so long ago because it is. I mean, if you think about it, my stand-up career can legally drink now. But when I wanted to pick a location, because that's the thing, right? You shoot a special and people want to ask you, where do you want to shoot it? I started thinking about it and I realized I wanted to shoot it in the city that gave me the beginning. Now, I don't want to give you too much backstory to my life because I'd like to break down my life in other episodes, because I was thinking the time that we live in right now, politically, socially, it's a weird time. I'm sure a lot of you think the same thing. And I started thinking about how, so much of my life has been devoted to going on the road and helping out with elections, not just the big presidential ones, but like state, local, anything to get people to show up to vote. And I actually learned that from Dolores Huerta. Dolores has this amazing power, and I have to explain because I always assume that everybody knows who Dolores is, right? But Dolores Huerta is a civil rights activist who, along with Cesar Chavez, really fought for the rights of farm workers. She has this ability that when you meet her, she really makes you think that you are capable of making change. Years ago, and I might have told this story before previously on the podcast, but like we were in a minivan, she and I. We were in Florida and we were doing these house meetings and we were going across the state trying to get people to vote, and I was asking her, Dolores, what do you think is one of the most important lessons you've learned? And let me tell you, at this point, Dolores and I, we get along. I've known her forever. I mean, it's like we're dear friends. And she said, one of the greatest things I've learned, I love seeing people get into their power, understanding that they have power and then seeing them go and share that knowledge, that power, teaching others that they're powerful. So I like doing a lot of election work. And for me, the goal has always been to show people that they matter. Because my life, and a lot of you might not know it, my life has been difficult, but I'm grateful for all of it. And I don't want to get into it in too specific details, because like I said, I want this to be a podcast where I can share that, because I think that a lot of us need to hear people's stories, like my story, to show you that, and I say this all the time, as different as we may look, as different as we may seem, we're all very much alike. Now, we might come from different cultures, different genders, different identities, but there are things that connect us. So this is why I'm telling you this story, because I accidentally kind of fell into stand-up, and it's changed my life. Now, years before I started stand-up, I was living in LA. I was trying to make it, Just so you know, growing up, I was always a theater nerd. I was a big theater kid. Oh my God, I loved performing. I loved musicals. I loved everything. This is before the internet. Before the internet, you couldn't see Broadway clips online or anything like that. Like, I used to spend summers at the public library reading scripts, seeing footage of like old Broadway shows, anything that I could find my hands on. We would go to the mall, we'd go to bookstores. I'd go to like any kind of, like anytime I went to a department store, if they had a music section, I would go to the CDs and I would look to see what Broadway cast recording was available. I loved it. So I was living in LA, I was trying to make it. Before I moved to LA, my oldest brother took a loan out and bought me a red Chevy Cavalier for me to drive to LA. And I loaded whatever I could into the car and I drove to Los Angeles. And, I was going to live out my dreams. And I didn't know anybody. I had no job lined up. I really had no money. And I ended up living in my car. And it was hard. But I was young and I was excited about the chance of making it, I mean, it's that typical, like, I moved to LA with nothing but a dream. It sounds sappy, but it's true. Now, I was in LA for a while trying to make it. I was working these odd jobs. One job I'll probably mention later on in an episode because it was a wild job. But then, shortly after my birthday, which for those of you that don't know, my birthday is on January 6th, a day that nothing happened in American history. I get a call from my brother, and he tells me that our mother is sick and is on her deathbed. And if you have followed me for a while, you know that I actually tell this story as a joke in my first special, Lower Classy. Took me over a decade to be able to talk about that day in my life, but spoiler alert, she didn't die. She was on her deathbed, she didn't die. And when she got better, she asked me to stay with her. And she begged me to not go back to LA, to chase my life, to chase my dream. And I stayed. I had no choice to do that because I knew I couldn't live with myself if I had told her no. So I stayed, and I became her caretaker. I used to take her to her doctor's appointments, make sure she took her meds, made sure she tried to exercise, everything. And I was doing this. My mom and I moved in with my sister and her family, and I was taking care of my mom, which, if you ever saw my sitcom, I had a sitcom years ago on ABC for a year, 22 episodes. In 2014, it was called Cristela. Thank God, because that was my name. And in the show, my mom and I lived with my sister and her family. So basically, that time from my life was actually, that's what the sitcom was based off. That time in my life where I took care of my mom. Except that in the TV show, the house was way bigger. They're always so much bigger. We were all cramped in. My mom and I shared a bedroom at my sister's house. My mom ended up dying in 2003. And then what happened, I kind of found myself stuck in Dallas. I didn't know what to do. I knew I had to get a job. And one thing I was really good at was serving. Oh, I was a hell of a server. My God, I was a hell of a server. So I started applying to jobs. I remember one day I applied to this Italian restaurant that was opening up. It was a chain restaurant. I went in, I did the interview. I knew I was going to get a call back. I knew it because I was really good at it. And back then, I was literally looking up help wanted ads. And I found this help wanted ad for this company. Didn't say what it was or anything. It just said office help needed. It sounded very easy, but very kind of vague, right? So I was like, oh, well, I'll go. Because in LA, I worked at an office, not for long, but I worked at an office and it was good. So I showed up at the help wanted place, the address, and it was a comedy club. They needed an office manager. And immediately I was like, I want this job. Now, let me tell you, my family, we loved stand-up growing up. Oh my God, we watched stand-up all the time. Years ago, when I was a little kid, HBO would show Comic Relief. Every year, it was hosted by Billy Crystal, Robin Williams, Whoopi Goldberg. They'd get together. It was a whole night where they'd celebrate comedy. They would raise money for charity. When I was a little kid, my brothers used to always tell me, they would sit down and they're like, okay, Chris, you can stay in the room, but the first time someone says a bad word, you got to get out. I lasted 5 seconds. I remember the first year I got kicked out by Don Rickles. Don Rickles came out, first thing out of his mouth, they're like, you got to go. And I would go, right? So it was this weird thing where, by the way, my light just turned off. If you're seeing this video, the light turned off. So, we grew up loving stand-up, but we didn't know it was a real job. We had no idea it was a real job. We just thought that people thought of this stuff off the top of their head. We didn't know that there was that people did this for a living. Because in my family, all of the jobs we had were physical labor. It was all manual labor. We all kind of thought that jobs had to kind of hurt. So I didn't know that people could get paid to think and to be funny. I didn't know that there was a business. I just really loved watching it on TV. So I remember I applied and I lied. And I said I had all of these skills that I didn't have. I didn't know how to do any of it. And then I thought, you know what? I'm going to lie. And I'm going to say that I'm my sister's assistant. My sister used to work at a call center. And she had a different name. She was married. So I was like, easy. They don't know we're related. So I lied and said I could do all this stuff. I turned in my application. I left. I ended up getting the job. And I used to have an old joke. The first joke that kind of blew up, oh God, it was like maybe, I'm going to say maybe 2006, 2007 maybe. I had a joke about lying on resumes based on me applying to get this job, right? And it was like, it was about how the joke was, it's like, have you guys ever lied so much on a resume, you're actually shocked that they give you the job? Like, you want to have a talk with the company and say, are you sure about this? Like, look at me, look at my resume. Do I look like an astronaut? Because, like, when I lie, I go all the way. I'm not going to do that whole, hey, I type 80 words a minute. I'm like, dude, I went to the moon. And I do that because my sister is my fake boss for every fake job I've ever had. So when you're calling to check references, you're never calling a real company. You're calling my sister's house. And you always know it's like not anything, right? Like you always know it's crap because when she answers the phone, she's like, hello, is NASA? Like, that's the joke, right? And I do the act out. Again, my jokes are usually based in truth. So I got the job at the Improv in Dallas, and I was the office manager, and I had to learn how to do all this stuff, and I was Googling stuff, and I learned how to do all this Photoshop and all this stuff, and I started doing the marketing for the clubs, and every weekend, the first weekend I got hired, I remember the headliner for the club was Mitch Hedberg. This really funny comic who is no longer with us. And I remember staying after my shift to watch him. And nobody said anything. And I thought, wait, I can just stay here and watch comics for free? Get out. And that's what I started doing. I would work during the day, and then I'd stay, and I would watch the comics. And I would just freak out. And like I would watch all of the shows. I would watch everything that they had. And I would just watch and watch and watch. And I was just in love with watching them perform because I was a theater nerd. I loved seeing people on stage, and I couldn't believe that I was seeing people craft these jokes in front of me. And, back then, the full weekends, people would go to the clubs and they'd work Wednesday through Sunday. And sometimes you would see these comics come in with an idea on Wednesday, and then by Sunday, they had a joke. And I was just like, how did they do this? Having done that, having said that, there are amazing comics that I saw. And there were some other comics that weren't that amazing. And one day I thought, I think I can do this. Because a lot of my theater experience, a lot of the stuff I did was comedy growing up. I loved comedy. So I would do all these comedic plays. I would do everything. I'm like, I can do this. And what's even cooler is that I can write my own material. Because that was one of the biggest challenges I had as a Latina. I had a voice teacher tell me when I was 18 years old that as a Latina, and this is in 1997, right? As a Latina, I could do West Side Story and Chorus Line. And after that, I was done. And I couldn't believe it because how can you peak so early? So when I thought of it, I was like, wait a minute, stand up. I can perform on stage. I can write my own stuff. I have control over all of the words that I'm going to say. I'm going to do it. And I decided that I was going to do stand up. And then I realized that my bosses didn't want to let me perform at the club because I worked there. And of course it makes sense. I was the office manager. Who's gonna let me perform? So I started writing ideas. And then there was a local comic in Dallas who I'm still friends with. Really funny guy. His name is Dean Lewis. He did these stand-up workshops at the club, at the Improv that I worked at. And at the end of the class, I want to say it was maybe 6 weeks, 8 weeks, I don't remember how long. At the end of the class, you got to do a set at the Improv. And I was like, you know what? If that's what it takes, that's what it takes. I started writing stuff. I, I talked to Dean because I was always in the office. And I was like, hey, Dean, would it be okay if I took your class so that I could do a set at the Improv and I can learn a little bit more about the structure, everything? And he was like, yeah, take my class. And I did. And I remember the graduation class was on Labor Day of 2003. And it was a Monday. And I have footage of it. I recorded it. I recorded it on VHS. It was to the point where I had to, like, now I still have the set. And I had to transfer VHS. I had to do all this work to transfer it into a file. It's in my Dropbox right now. I graduated, quote unquote, graduated. I performed that night. And I loved it. Oh my God, I loved it. I loved it so much. And I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. This gives me the same feeling as that I had like doing comedy, like doing like comedic plays, doing theater. Like, this is what I want to do. And they said, well, now what? Then I had to start doing open mics. And my God, once I got into the open mic scene, oh man, I was in love with it. I would work during the day. I would have my little notebook. I would write all these joke ideas, everything. I started going out to open mics. You know, there weren't a lot of women doing it back then, you know. And what's funny is that I was just kind of seen as one of the comics, like an open micer, and it felt so exciting, you know? And here's the thing, even though I was the office manager at the Improv, I couldn't get work at the Improv because I was the office manager. I couldn't get sets. And I wanted to do it so much that I started driving to San Antonio, to Austin, trying to do the open mics. I had a friend, a Latino comic named Jesse Pangelinan, who passed away last year, who told me I should just drive to San Antonio, drive anywhere I could and get stage time. And that's what I did. I would go drive 3 hours, 4 hours, you know, wherever I could, do a set, drive back, and go to work. That's how much I loved it. Well, I couldn't get work at the club. And it made sense. And then finally, one day, I was notorious. I was like, all of my friends that started out in Dallas with me, we were all notorious. Like, we were comedy nerds. We always had notebooks with us. I left my notebook, the classic black and white composition book, right? I left it in the bar. I was getting off work, and I remember I was going to go tell the person working at the box office something about like that show, the show that night. I wasn't going to stay and watch the show because I had an open mic to do. And the headliner that week came in at that time that I was leaving. And I had left my notebook. I went to the box office. I come back, and the headliner is reading my notebook. And I go up to him and I grab the notebook and I'm like, thank you, that's mine. And he was like, who wrote these jokes? And I was like, I did. And he's like, you wrote these jokes? I was like, yes, I did. And he was like, do you want to do a guest spot? Yeah, I'm headlining. You want to do a guest spot? Now, normally any comic would be like, yeah, Of course. I was like 6 months in, I think, at this point. I said no. I said no. Now, why? Why would I say no? I said no because I told him, I don't think I'm ready. How much do you want me to do? He's like, I want you to do 5 minutes. I'm like, I'm not ready. Because that was going to be the first time that like the club saw me. And I didn't want to throw away my shot. I know it sounds very Hamilton. like, it's like I actually threw away my shot. And I said no. And he was really surprised, and I didn't do it. And I thought, well, that's it. Came back next time he was into town. I want to say like within a year or so. Came back, sees me, says, oh, you're here. You still doing stand-up? I'm like, yes, I am. And he's like, you want to do a guest spot? I'm like, yes, I do. And I did it. And it went great. I did 5 minutes. Now, let me tell you, my friend Dean, the comic that taught the classes, he would tell us that, like, it was important to work to work clean, to have the ability to work clean. And I was so into the mind of everything that I was like, okay, as I'm like working at the club, I knew the set times that I should shoot for, like the lengths. I was so meticulous. I would have sets for 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 10 minutes, 12 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 25 minutes, 30 minutes. No more. And I didn't even have like the 20, 25 minutes. I could do up to 12, 15. It gave me the confidence. From that point, I started doing it, and I got to the point where I quit my job managing the Improv in Dallas, and I decided to move back to LA to try to do stand-up. That was in 2005. And it was the best decision I ever did. I talk to a lot of people that started out with me. We're all, we know each other. We all still talk. Steve, my best friend, started in Dallas with me. And we always talk about how, like, when we started doing it, we were doing it for fun. We didn't really think that we were going to do it for a living. We didn't really think that we were going to do it as a career. We didn't think that big. I didn't think that big. I just thought, well, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to stop doing it when it stops being fun. And 22 years later, I'm still doing it. I never thought I was going to get to do it on the level that I've been able to do it. And I'm pretty grateful for that. It was kind of wild. Here's the thing about me, though. A lot of people don't know this. I have really bad anxiety. I mean, that's something that I just found out about myself a couple years ago. I struggle with really bad anxiety and really bad depression. The anxiety kills me. And I'm very surprised that I've been able to do what I've been able to do on the level that I've been able to do, because I struggle so much with being in crowds. And I know it sounds weird. And I mention this because there's times that I tell that to people and they don't believe me. They don't understand how I have this job where I'm in front of people. They don't understand. Like, some people think I'm lying about having this anxiety. And I don't understand. Like, I don't see how people would think that I would make it up. I don't like being in social settings. And sometimes I find myself in this world of stand-up really struggling to be around people because I just I just struggle. You know, it's funny because a while ago I was out in a social setting. I was doing something for the election, and you know, I'm kind of I kind of have a big personality, and I said something, and this person, you know, mentioned that I have a big personality. And I was like, "Oh, I know." I'm like, I actually struggle with like social anxiety pretty bad. This is kind of a big deal for me to be out because I don't really go out." And they didn't believe me. And at that moment, I was thinking, you know, I wish I could explain to people that a lot of times the bigness of the personality that I have um, is an act. I do an impression of someone that isn't terrified. When I was a kid, I used to have to perform a lot. My mom, she never learned English, right? My mom and I we were always together. She was like my best friend. And as a little kid, I used to see her, and there were times that she was so sad, and I saw it, and I always wanted to cheer her up, and I would perform for her to cheer her up, and you know, I did a joke in my last special about how Spanish is my first language. Es mi primer idioma. Mi madre nunca aprendió inglés. You know, so I learned English by watching TV shows. And people don't understand, like, uh, I, a lot of the English that I learned is from characters on TV. You know how people sometimes, have you ever seen like people that imitate people? And they can hear the voice and then they kind of like imitate it, like, you know, it's that's kind of how I learned English. I would see these characters on TV and I would mimic their voices, and that's how I learned English. And you know, it's like if I saw a woman using a high-pitched voice and stuff, I would watch it learning English, not knowing that I was trying to learn English, you know? It was just something that was instinctive. I would watch her voice, like do her voice, and then I would be at home and I'm like, I think, I think, I think, oh my God, sure, of course. Nailed it. And I knew that I was imitating her, but I was trying to learn English. I was trying to do these characters. Um, and a lot of times I find myself doing that to get through the anxiety that I feel from having to be around people sometimes. And I say that because not a lot of people know that. And I think it's important to be honest and open about what kind of person you are. And for me, I say that because I'm sure there's other people out there that deal with something similar. And I think that connecting to people, that that is how we evolve and we grow. So, I'm very lucky. I know I'm very lucky to be able to do what I do on the level that I do. And by that, I mean the set of circumstances in my life that allowed me to perform. Whether it be performing for my mom and trying to make sure that she she wasn't sad. You know, I tell this story all the time. My mom and I, we used to watch soap operas. We used to watch the novelas, you know, like the novelas de Televisa. Porque, like, back in those days, TV Azteca no existía. You would see Televisa, you know. Every now and then you'd see the other ones, pero Televisa was our big thing. But during the day, you know, if I was around the house, especially in the summer, we would watch like the English ones. And we used to watch like The Young and the Restless, Bold and the Beautiful, General Hospital, you know, whenever she wasn't at work. And there was a character on Bold and the Beautiful named Ridge. And Ridge back then had like a cleft in his chin and sideburns. And sometimes to cheer up my mom, to make my mom laugh, I would get her her red eyeliner, like the you know, like the cover, is it CoverGirl? The red stick, the red pencil. I'd grab her eyeliner and I would draw the sideburns on my face, and I draw the little line on the chin as the cleft, you know. And I would like walk around and I'm like, Mom, Mom, soy Ridge. Hola, ¿qué estás haciendo? And I would like do Ridge in Spanish for her, and she would laugh, you know. So it always made me feel like I had done my job. And I think that's actually one of the reasons that stand up kind of came so easy to me in a weird way, like the aspect you know, of performing and stuff. But it kind of came up accidentally. It was just literally me being at the right place at the right time, and like Liam Neeson and Taken, having a particular set of skills. So now I'm 22 years into stand up. I'm about to shoot my third Netflix special in Dallas. June 14th, 2 shows. The Majestic Theater. I can't believe it. It's kind of amazing to me. So when I had the chance, you know, the first special I did is called Lower Classy. The last one was called Middle Classy. This one's going to be called, you know, OnlyFans. I'm kidding. Upper Classy. I figured I got to go back to where it started. Dallas, Texas. My sister and her kids live there. My brothers will come up from the Rio Grande Valley where I was born and raised. I get to see like a lot of the comics I started out with. I get to invite Dean Lewis to the show. Without him, I wouldn't have done it. Without so many people, I wouldn't have done it. I'm excited about this special, well, as much as I can be, because part of the anxiety is me being terrified of it and dreading it until it's over. But I'm doing my version of being excited. And I wanted to share that story because, by the way, I forgot to mention, if you ever saw the sitcom Cristela, obviously the sitcom took place in Dallas. So Dallas is a very important city to me. So if you want to come and check out the special, I hope you do. I guess it's time to wrap it up. I've been talking for quite a while, but I don't know, I wanted to share that with you. I kind of started doing stand-up because I showed up at this help wanted, you know, I responded to a help wanted ad that led to a comedy club that changed my life. And even then, when I showed up, I almost didn't go in because I knew I was able to get that serving job. And I was a hell of a great server. But I took that chance. And now I'm here. So that's what I'm doing. That's what's been going on. The podcast is called To Be Continued because God knows when I'll do the next one. I'm going to try to do it on a regular basis. But I want to share my thoughts about how I feel, what I've lived, blah, blah, blah. And I don't know. Maybe you'll respond to it. Maybe you won't. But I just want to tell you, it's hard for me sometimes to do this. because I struggle with the anxiety, but I do my best. So, thank you for listening. I can't wait for you guys to see this hour. And I don't know. I guess that's it for now. Usually in the episodes, I always talk about the thing that I've been into lately. So maybe I should do that real quick before I sign off. Thing I've been into lately, totally random, Pilates. I've been going to Pilates 4 times a week. I go on Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I take Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday off. I started doing it because I'm diabetic. And well, I've been doing it for years, but I started doing it pretty intensely because I'm diabetic and I wanted to work on my numbers. And it's been really cool. It's kind of cool because, like, it's a lot of stretching, it's a lot of movement, slow movement and stuff. And you're doing all this stuff. And when you see it from afar, you're like, is that a workout? And then when you're doing it, you're like, hey, this hurts. So that's the thing I'm into right now. So to recap, third Netflix special coming up, Upper Classy. It's for Netflix, June 14th, those shows, the 14th of June. Tickets go on sale this week. There's going to be an artist pre-sale code available Wednesday, March 19th. Hope to see you there. I can't wait. It's going to be so much fun. And thank you for listening to whoever made it this far. I don't know, all 4 of my listeners. I didn't even give you guys a shout out at the beginning. I have 4 listeners. There's 4 people that listen to this podcast. And you know what? It wouldn't be an episode of To Be Continued if I didn't thank all 4 of you. No more than 4 people listen to this podcast. Maybe they do, but maybe more than 4. But 4 listeners. To my 4 listeners, 1, 2, 3, 4, I hope you're all doing well. Please let me know how you're doing. I hope you like this, and I'll see you guys next time, I guess. I mean, whenever that is. I guess that's part of the appeal of the podcast, right? To be continued. Nunca sabes. Nunca sabes cuándo. ¿Cuándo voy a regresar? When am I going to be back? The drama. All right. I'll see you guys later. Take care.